Welcome to Fluent-ish, the podcast. Season 1 of this show is called The Bilingual Blueprint from Hesitation to Conversation, and you've tuned in to episode 8, where we're addressing the question, can I improve my mindset around studying grammar?
If you're new here, I'm Rebecca, founder and author at Little Crab Educational Press. I've been learning Mandarin for over 20 years, and I don't like it when people treat parking space lines as merely a suggestion.
I'm Lisa, co-owner and graphic designer at Little Crab Educational Press, a French language learner, Rebecca's little sister, and I used to pierce ears at Claire's.
We firmly believe that language learning is for everyone, so you won't find any language snobbery here. Whether you want to be fluent or are happy being fluent-ish, just come as you are, whatever your level.
We're here to cheer you on.
This episode of Fluent-ish, the podcast, is brought to you by Flowdesk, our favorite email marketing tool. Flowdesk keeps everything on brand, is easy to use, beautifully designed, and seamless. And Flowdesk does not punish you for growing your business. Start for free and then enjoy unlimited emails and subscribers for one flat rate. Get excited for powerful yet intuitive and affordable email list building. Use the link flowdesk.com/c/littlecrabpress to get 50% off your first year of Flowdesk. Okay, Rebecca, today's barrier is the loathing people can often feel when they are trying to learn grammar. So the main question is, can I improve my mindset around studying, loathing, grammar? And I'm going to go through several grammar-related questions that people commonly ask. And as our resident CELTA-certified language teacher, you're going to tell us what the experts have to say about those questions. Number 1, what is the best way to remember grammar rules in a second or additional language?
For this question, I pulled up what Diane Larsen-Freeman has to say about it. Diane Larsen-Freeman is an applied linguist and professor emerita at the University of Michigan, known for pioneering the concept of grammaring and integrating complexity theory into second language acquisition. Her concept of grammaring treats grammar as a skill developed through meaningful use rather than memorization. So her research shows that learning grammar consciously through rules is less effective than learning it through repeated exposure in context. This is said in her book, Teaching Language, From Grammar to Grammaring from 2003. Notice she doesn't say completely ineffective. If you aren't learning your target language in an environment where it is also the community language, then you have to start somewhere. And sometimes we need to see sentences parsed out in a textbook or at the chalkboard or what have you to be able to wrap our heads around it. But overall, you will have more success if you are encountering the grammar out in the wild from repeated exposure from native speakers. This is why I am a huge proponent of letting yourself watch TV and movies in order to study.
Love that. That reminds me of our Fluentish mug that we're going to be coming out with soon. Don't make me diagram this sentence.
Yeah.
Moving on to question 2. Do I need to learn grammar to be fluent in a language?
This next answer comes from the OG grammar MC, Michael Swan. Michael Swan is a British writer and teacher trainer specializing in English language teaching and best known for his widely used reference book, Practical English Usage, from 2016. Although I believe there's been a bunch of different editions or whatever. Swan argues that fluency can emerge from practice and immersion, even without deep theoretical understanding. So, do I need to learn grammar to be fluent in a second language? In Practical English Usage, he says, it is entirely possible to develop considerable proficiency in a language without much explicit knowledge of grammar at all.
Yeah, I would argue that there are people I encounter on the daily who are first language English speakers speaking English who very clearly don't know a lot of grammar rules, and I can still understand those people.
Mm-hmm. Also, this reminds me, because Michael Swan is such a well-known resource. Betty Azar is another one for English teachers. You would pretty much always have one of his books in the teacher's resource classroom or whatever, you know. And one of the things that these grammar books make me realize is, or remember, is like times when there were students that I had who were really into grammar. And sometimes people would like have little debates over grammar points. And then you're practicing fluency by talking about something you're nerding out about. It just happens to be grammar, you know? So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
anyway.
that's cool. All right, moving on to question number 3. Why is grammar so hard to learn in an additional language?
This answer comes from Rod Ellis. Ellis is a leading researcher in second language acquisition and a professor at Curtin University in Australia, noted for his work on task-based language teaching and the role of grammar in L2 learning. He
Hmm.
highlights language transfer, the tendency to apply patterns from your native language, which is
Mhm.
a primary reason grammar feels challenging.
Right.
In the study of second language acquisition from 1994, he said L2 learners often transfer the grammatical structures of their first language, which can lead to persistent errors and difficulty mastering forms that do not exist in the L1. So the interesting thing about this for me is a big part of the reason why I started Little Crab Educational Press and we did our flagship storybook, Little Byron, 小白人, is because I wanted to make Mandarin seem more accessible to English speakers. And I saw similarities in Mandarin and English grammar that were fascinating to me because people always make it seem like Chinese could not be more, you know, far-flung a language as one could find, which is silly.
Right.
But, you know, so some of the things that English and Mandarin have in common are important structural things, like at the most simple level, the subject, verb, object form.
Right.
We can say, 我喜欢你, I like you. A subject, verb, object. And there's a lot of other things that are not super far off. So for me, finding the similarities between English and Mandarin, I don't think it hindered my ability to absorb the grammar structures that were definitely not English.
Right.
It was like the door was open, the door was cracked enough, you know,
Mm.
where the Venn diagram overlapped, it opened the
Right.
door for me, right? And then I was able to like slowly get into the mindset, you know,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of of Mandarin, like
Put the
culturally,
hat on.
mentally. Yeah, putting the hat on. So
Yeah.
to be honest, I can't say for certain that I never do that, but
Mm.
I don't find myself being like, "Oh, why won't you be English?" You know?
Come on.
Yeah, and maybe it's because from teaching English, I know you don't want another language to be English. It's already complicated enough, right?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So I have 2 things I want to add, well, a question and an ad. I'm going to
Mm,
do my ad first, because this podcast is for anybody who's interested in languages, people who are already on the road to learning a new language, people who are 7 languages deep and are just looking
mm.
for some fresh inspiration,
Yeah.
people who have kids that they're teaching multiple languages to. Maybe you're passing your heritage language on to your children or child. And even for like teachers in the classroom who, might want some fresh perspective or some anecdotes or whatever. We don't, I think we said at the top of like episode 1 or 2, we don't expect people to be learning Mandarin or learning French, which is what I'm learning, but we use a lot of those examples. I can say, as someone who does not speak Mandarin, and is not learning Mandarin other than just the few little things that I pick up from Becky and make her laugh with every once in a while. um, I did the graphic design for the second edition of Little Byron. So I know what Rebecca's talking about when she's talking about these grammar forms line up. These ones are a little bit different. These ones are completely different. If you are Mandarin curious or a beginner Mandarin learner, we actually have a video on our YouTube channel that explains text scaffolding, which is
文本脚手架.
it's the text layout that Rebecca actually developed herself to help make Mandarin and English more accessible and make the books reversible and allow you to not need to leave the book to go find a definition for something if you're an English speaker reading the Mandarin or a Mandarin speaker reading the English. There's a lot of other little detail features in there too, but part of it involves its scaffolding being stacking and also color coding. So the video actually has examples from Little Byron. And if you go to littlecrabpress.ca and look in our little shop, you can go to the beginning learners tab in that drop-down menu and go to the children's books. You'll see Little Byron there. And there's actually 2 double-page spreads available if you just want to like have a static image to look at to kind of understand what Rebecca's talking about, because those pages show examples of the variations between those kind of like 3 stages of similarity, from very similar to quite different to very different. So that's, I wanted to add. The question that I wanted to ask is just for us dum-dums who don't teach English. Can we just confirm, am I correct in surmising from that, your answer to that, the last question, that L1 means first language and L2 means a second language?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of terminology for like, linguists or people who are studying, like, what's
I
the
just
word
feel
I'm
like
looking
if we're
for?
speaking in those terms, then we just want to kind of, the
It's like,
L1, I was
it's
like,
a teaching
I think I know what that means.
pedagogy jargon.
Yeah.
Yeah, not but it is teaching pedagogy jargon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair. Okay, I just wanted to specify.
Yeah, L2 learners being my L2 is Mandarin and my L1 is English. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that is what I thought, but I just thought I'd check.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to question 4. What are the most important grammar rules to learn first?
Here we tapped H. Douglas Brown, an influential American applied linguist and professor emeritus at San Francisco State University, renowned for his books on language learning theory and ESL teaching methodology. Brown recommends prioritizing high-frequency grammar points with real-world relevance. In his book, Principles of Language Learning and Teaching, 2007, he says, grammar instruction should focus on structures that are frequent and useful in communication, particularly those that cause misunderstandings if used incorrectly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, those misunderstandings will, of course, be different for you if, say, one student is going from German to Thai and another is going from English to Thai and so on. So what you need to focus on will likely differ somewhat from your classmates if you're in a language class with people from mixed backgrounds.
I think that's super interesting. I was having a conversation. I was at a doctor's appointment the other day and telling the doctor that we're doing this podcast, and he was very interested, and he also is learning French. And he said something that I agree with. Growing up in Canada, his French education stunk.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I too feel like for 10 years, I just kept learning pencil, paper, table,
Exactly.
and on over
Pamplemousse.
and over and over again. And he's like, exactly. So one thing that I think, if you are self-teaching and you're kind of approaching it in the very sort of casual way that I'm approaching my French until my kids are in school, you don't necessarily know, like if you're not super language nerdy, you won't necessarily know that, unless you're really giving it a lot of thought. Part of what we're trying to do is help people be more thoughtful when they feel like they need to be about choosing their additional language. That's what episode 3's free stuff was all about. If you haven't signed up, go to littlegrabpress.ca and tap the Fluent-ish tab. Sign up for the free stuff, because there's so much information in that one. In all of the episode 3 resources, if you are trying to choose a language and you want to do it in a really intentional way instead of going off vibes, like we talked about being an option in that episode. I have said before that I'm learning French because we have 2 official languages in Canada and I don't really know one of them. And I think that's kind of weird. And it suits my brain. Like the sounds of it are very natural and fluid in my brain.
Yeah.
But I don't have any memory of being taught the different grammar structures other than the order that adjectives come in. But it's not even an all the time thing. There are certain grammar elements that, as I'm getting more and more advanced in my study, I'm like, oh, I need to actually study this and find out why it doesn't follow the pattern that I was expecting it to from earlier. Yeah, that's, the idea of focusing on the practical usage. That makes sense too. Like but it's if you aren't approaching language learning from the perspective of a language teacher or someone who's ever helped other people learn languages, you're not going to know all the questions to ask yourself. You don't know what you don't know until you know that you didn't know it.
Yep. That's what this is all about. That's exactly what all of the this is why we're giving you so much detail here at Fluent-ish, the podcast.
Granular little
We're teeing you up. We're teeing you up. You can hit it down the fairway.
And you can do it. Moving on to question 5. How can I practice grammar without boring exercises?
Patsy Lightbrown and Nina Spada are Canadian researchers in second language education, best known for their co-authored book, How Languages Are Learned, from 2013, which bridges theory and classroom practice. In it, they emphasize task-based learning, which builds grammar through communication, not drills. Quote, tasks that involve real-world use of language like storytelling, role-playing, or problem-solving allow learners to develop grammatical competence in an engaging, meaningful context. This was a major part of my ESL teacher training, learning how to create tasks for students to do as a group that would necessitate the use of certain grammar points in order to facilitate clear communication, and how to make them fun.
Rebecca was the fun kind of teacher.
I was the dancing monkey kind.
Exactly.
There's the librarian kind and the dancing monkey, and I was
She was the let me entertain you and teach you
you.
something at the same time. That sounds very cool. This is how I am exposing myself as not being a learner who learned about language learning before I started learning a language. I might need to pick up a book or two on language learning, or I'll just ask you because you know a lot of stuff. Becky teaches me for free.
The other thing is, like, a lot of the time, I mean, when I was learning English grammar in high school, I wasn't really absorbing it like totally perfectly crackerjack. I
Yeah.
was certainly like one of the better students at like English, I guess,
Right.
generally speaking. But it wasn't until I decided to try to work in that field, and therefore
Right.
was like, geez, I better, bone up on all this stuff. And
I
once
better
I
learn what a
had,
gerund is.
yeah,
I still don't know.
oh, did
She's
I
taught me so
ever?
many times. I still don't know.
Well, it's went no. Yeah, so basically, once I had to teach it myself, that's what taught it. Like, I taught
Yeah.
it to myself to teach it,
See one, do
And it's
one,
not
teach
that I
one?
didn't learn how to teach it from the trainings that I did as well.
Sure.
I didn't just do CELTA, I did other types.
Yeah.
It's just that that's the quickest one to say. But in your case, what's kind of cool is that you've started down the path of like listening comprehension and grammar practice to a certain extent without knowing the meta language for all of the grammar that you're doing
100%. Yeah.
and vocabulary and stuff. So once you start to do something in a little bit more academic, scholarly kind of a way, it'll absorb more quickly than if you had started with that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously the best thing for you would be to like get to go to France for a long time or something, or
Okay.
yeah, or maybe Montreal. What am I saying?
Yeah.
Why go that far? Stay in Canada. But
Yeah. Go visit my
sometimes
bestie in Montreal.
oh yeah. Sometimes we have to, make compromises. And I mean,
We got to work with what we can work with.
yeah.
What's available to you. I mean, that's the other part of a lot of I'm going to plug it again. The free stuff is all about we've talked a lot on the pod about providing ChatGPT prompts for things, and that may seem like some kind of like a weird shortcut or whatever, but if you think about how many languages there are in the world and how many levels of practice and knowledge people are at, like we wouldn't be able to give the answers for everything.
It's not an infinite number of combinations, but it would basically feel like that if we were to try to like write something for, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, all I was going to say is a lot of what we build into the prompts that we give you for ChatGPT is what your circumstances are. Will you ever move to where your target language is or anything like that? Like all of those factors get considered when you are developing your own learning plan. So
go check out the free stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to question 6. Is it better to learn grammar through speaking or writing?
For this one, we will turn to Meryl Swain, a Canadian applied linguist and professor emerita at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, best known for her output hypothesis in second language acquisition research. Swain's output hypothesis stresses that speaking and writing force learners to refine their grammar because they need to be understood. In the book Communicative Competence, Some Roles of Comprehensible Input and Comprehensible Output in Its Development, 1985, Swain said learners tend to process grammar differently when producing language. speaking, writing, versus understanding it, listening, reading. Both modes are essential, but production reinforces grammatical accuracy. So to answer the question, is it better to learn grammar through speaking or writing? It's kind of both. Speaking tends to challenge your ability to improvise, and writing tends to give you more time to proofread and edit and reconsider your points. That said, in this day and age, if you can find a friend who is a native speaker in your target language with whom you can text back and forth, you kind of speed up the writing process and break it into more bite-sized, chewable pieces. You can choose to be lazy about writing well in text, but still, having a friend to text with can be a huge motivating factor to get faster and better compared to doing textbook exercises.
My only options for native speakers in my life would be friends' husbands.
Yeah, right.
Hello. Bonjour. Okay. Moving on to question 7. Why do I keep making the same grammar mistakes?
For this one, we are reaching way back to 1972 and looking in Larry Selinker's book called Interlanguage. Selinker is an American linguist and one of the founders of the interlanguage theory, recognized for introducing the concept of fossilization in second language learning. Fossilization explains why persistent grammar errors are so difficult to correct. Quote, fossilization, the persistence of errors in learners' language use, can result when errors become ingrained through repeated use, especially when learners are not receiving corrective feedback. While we know that fossilization is annoying as a language learner, one mindset shift you can offer yourself is that, as we have said, native speakers of English have ingrained fossilized mistakes when they speak English, and a lot of the time they aren't noticed by other native speakers because while we all might be sticklers on certain grammar points, we don't all know the same ones as well as each other.
That part.
Yeah, you can't escape fossilization, so don't let it stop you. And don't believe you can't fix it if you really focus on one for a long time. Again, let's stop being language snobs to one another. If you are showing you are working hard to be understood, you have to get credit for that. It has to be respected. We can't beat down people who are trying. Speaking is embarrassing for people no matter what language it's done in. That's one of the things I love about Canada. We're not changing our official language to English only. We can always be better at being a diverse place, but at least so many of us appreciate the effort we're all making. Working on fossilized errors will take time and you may never get to fixing them all. That has to be okay. We have to be able to proceed with learning regardless.
This is not grammar related, it's spelling related, but I will never forget Mr. Power making me write the word exercise 500 times because I did it wrong for increasing numbers of repetitions.
Oh no.
But it ended up being 500 in grade 5.
Whoa.
That's 5th grade for y'all American listeners. Okay, so moving on to our final question. Number 8. Should I study grammar before vocabulary or the other way around?
For this one, we turn to Michael Lewis. He was a British language educator and author who developed the lexical approach, emphasizing vocabulary and collocation over traditional grammar instruction in language teaching. Before we get into his quote, just a quick sidebar to explain collocations. A collocation is a group of 2 or more words that are often used together in a way that sounds natural to native speakers. So examples in English would be make a decision, fast food, heavy rain, take a break. Now you might hear those and go like, yeah, that's like normal. Like what's special about that? Well, they're called collocations because we don't say do a decision, we say make a decision. We don't say quick food, we say fast food. We don't say strong rain, we say heavy rain. We don't say do a break, we say take a break. These are not just idioms or fixed expressions. They're word pairings with strong habitual usage. There isn't necessarily like a rule behind them. That's just what collocations are. They're like collected together little chunks of words, you know?
It's, you know what? That's the kind of thing that like even across your own country, you'll hear different ones.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's interesting. I haven't thought about that.
So examples in Mandarin would be 下雨, which means to rain, but the literal translation is fall rain or down rain. 做决定 is make a decision, but literally it's do a decision. And 开车 is to drive a car, but it literally is to open a car.
Mm, interesting.
Mm.
A couple of French examples would be for the decision one, prendre une décision, make a decision, but that literally translates to take a decision and take a break, faire une pause, do a break.
So Lewis's lexical approach suggests that grammar and vocabulary should not be separated. They work best when learned together. In his book, The Lexical Approach from 1993, he said, grammar and vocabulary are interdependent. Words gain meaning through their grammatical contexts, and grammar exists to structure vocabulary into meaningful communication.
Which kind of helps to be a little less grumpy about the idea of studying grammar.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
it's like, if you don't think of it as like an isolated thing, and it's like, no, it provides a structure that allows you to build on top of,
Mm-hmm.
that's a little bit of a more like,
Okay, it's worth my time then.
worthwhile. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. All right, well, that brings us to a little segment where we highlight something in language, language learning, culture, or the like that we love, or we want to just go away. In the spirit of our respective second languages, we call this segment oh la la or boo boo boo. If it's something we love, we'll give it an oh la la, but if it's something we want to put an end to, we'll give it a boo boo boo, which means no 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 in Mandarin, but conveniently sounds like boo in English. For today's episode, Rebecca will be sharing her thoughts.
I'm actually going to share our favorite strategy for improving your second language acquisition.
That sounds like an oh la la.
Oh, it is.
You just mentioned, so you know.
That's right. Okay, good point.
Yeah.
Okay. We like to show examples of how success is possible. Research tells us that it's easier to learn when we are enjoying ourselves. This is true at any age for any subject. A learning experience that offers knowledge in a way that also entertains wins. Not to mention, finding joy in learning absolutely nurtures a growth mindset. A perfect example of how surprisingly easy it is to learn from someone who isn't speaking your native language, as long as you have carefully established the context first. That's what us teachers actually do. Are these super friendly and funny Chinese cooking videos from the Tasty YouTube channel, which describes itself as the official YouTube channel of all things tasty, the world's largest food network.
Ooh.
In particular, we love two videos, which we'll pop into the show notes for you. In these videos, one host teaches another how to cook a Chinese food dish while speaking only Mandarin, whereas the person doing the cooking is totally monolingual, an English native speaker, with no significant previous exposure to Chinese. The hosts giggle all the way through, but it is truly incredible how quickly the English speaker actually catches on to what the Mandarin host is saying and how accurately they manage to complete the cooking task. They don't have a vocabulary sheet next to them to tell them what all of the ingredients are. They get told at the beginning and then they have to actually figure it out and sort of remember. It is crazy. You can see the wheels turning in their brains and it's so joyful. So regardless of what language you are learning or helping your kid to learn, these videos are a must watch. They are enough to give any person the confidence to feel like maybe foreign languages don't have to feel so foreign after all, and that maybe learning a second language isn't so out of reach and can actually be super fun. And the best part, the videos are totally kid-friendly, so you can easily watch them with your kid and root for the English speaker doing the cooking and the Chinese language study simultaneously. Honestly, as a language teacher, I can say these videos just get me so excited.
I love that. Fold in the cheese. This show is sponsored by Shopify. Launch your online store and support Fluentish at no extra cost to you. With our exclusive Shopify affiliate link, you can start with a 3-day free trial, then enjoy Shopify's powerful features for just $1 a month for the next 3 months. By using our link, you gain access to Shopify's robust tools and features, and we earn a commission that helps us continue creating valuable content for language learners like you. Find the link shopify.pxf.io/Fluentish in the episode description. It's a win-win! And now we're gonna love you and leave you with our last segment, your joy builder. Before we go, we want to leave you with a quick recap, a foundational nugget that should serve as your focal point for what we want you to take away from this episode in order to help you continue to build up your bravery in taking risks and making mistakes as a language learner. Because Michael Swan says, quote, "It is entirely possible to develop considerable proficiency in a language without much explicit knowledge of grammar at all," end quote. And Light Brown and Spada say, quote, "Tasks that involve real-world use of language, like storytelling, role-playing, or problem-solving, allows learners to develop grammatical competence in an engaging, meaningful context," end quote. You now know that you don't need to rely as strongly on your textbook, and it is absolutely worth your time to seek out real-world activities and tasks to engage in your target language, even if you think you aren't ready yet. And as Diane Larsen-Freeman says, because it's best to learn, quote, "through repeated exposure in context," end quote, that real world context can also at times be provided by watching TV and movies. So even if some days you are feeling too lazy to use your productive skills, speaking and writing, you still have a backup. We give you permission to veg out with your favorite show or videos like the cooking show Rebecca was talking about. Now, what problem are you going to solve in your target language today?
If you found value in today's episode, you'll find show notes and links at our website, littlecrabpress.ca, which is also home to our little freebie library, and so much more. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you tap that button to keep on breaking new ground in your language learning. Lastly, please take a moment to review the show on your podcast app, or to send this episode to someone you think could use it. It all helps us continue to build a safe space for the fluent and fluent-ish that is free of snobbery and filled with joy. Oh, I forgot to say, sport version tonight.
Yeah. Cozy Sunday night recording.
If you're new here, no. Okay. Wow. So Richard.
And now we are gonna love you and leave you. Okay.
I love it when your voice kind of goes, hey, now.
No.
Fluent-ish, the podcast, is brought to you by Little Crab Educational Press. Thank you to the language learning communities on Blue Sky, Reddit, and Instagram for sharing openly about the struggles that people have to overcome to persevere in the pursuit of becoming fluent or fluent-ish in an additional language. Remember to subscribe, rate, review, and share from wherever you get your podcasts. This show is edited and produced by Rebecca Jewton with graphic design and support work provided by Lisa Zach, both of whom also research, write, and host each episode. The theme music is by the Canadian duo Milk Fangs. Hear more from them on bandcamp.com.
Fluent-ish, the podcast, is recorded remotely between Victoria and Vancouver, which sit in the unceded traditional territories of several Coast Salish nations, across which we are grateful to live and work.